Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 14.4 RC or release candidate has been out for a few days. And if you're not familiar with release candidate, it's the replacement for GM or Golden Master, which both mean the same thing, basically that it's ready to release to the public if Apple doesn't find anything major with it. So generally they'll release it to developers and then public beta testers first, like we have already, and then a few days later or a week later they'll release it to the public. Now I'll talk more about when to expect the release later in the video, but the first thing I wanted to talk about is the new features that are in it that I didn't mention in the What's New video. And I've been using this on my iPhone 12 Pro Max, my iPad Pro 12.9 from 2020 with iPadOS 14.4 RC, as well as the iPhone 11 that I have here. Now my main phone is the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and one of the new features that was recently discovered by my friend Steve Moser, and something that I sort of helped verify, it seems, is that Apple has added the ability to use Siri and the word "Hey" in front of it with AirPods Max. So if you have a pair of AirPods Max, for example, you can now use those. And the way I tested this is I took my AirPods Max, connected them to my iPhone Max, and then put my iPhone 12 Pro Max down on a table, walked into another room, closed the door, and then said the words "Hey," and then the other word. And by doing that, I actually said "Hey," then "What's the weather today?" and it responded. Now I didn't have any audible cues or anything. I was playing music at the same time. It responded, interrupted it, gave me the weather, and then went back to the music. So it seems to be working on the AirPods Max, and that's a new feature that Apple didn't mention that they added, but should have been there before anyway. So I was not able to use that before. If you were, let me know in the comments below, but it seems like it's a new feature with 14.4. Now the other thing that they may have added, but they didn't update in their notes, and so we'll have to wait and see when it releases to the public, is the anti-tracking feature that they've been mentioning since the initial release of iOS 14. What that does is stop apps from Facebook from tracking activity across different websites and things like that, and it blocks it. And Facebook has made a lot of noise about this, as well as some other corporations that want to track information, and so Facebook apparently won't be able to do this once this is enabled. However, Apple did not specify whether or not those tracking features would be in here, but people using iOS 14.4 have been seeing this message, which tells you that it's active. So I actually haven't seen this. I don't have Facebook on my phone, but if you've seen it, let me know in the comments below, because hopefully it's in the final version, but they didn't mention it. And this has been a long time coming, so hopefully we get this in this update where we can have more privacy. Now you can opt out of it, of course, but with the feature there, it's always nice to have that. Now, another thing that is not a new feature per se, but sort of something that's been recently learned, is that if you have an iPhone 12, 12 mini, 12 Pro, or iPhone 12 Pro Max with MagSafe, there's a big magnet in the back here, or you have the MagSafe charger, you need to be careful if you're using a medical device such as a pacemaker, because it could interfere. So Apple recently put out more information about this, saying keep this more than 12 inches away and consult with your physician. So it makes sense. You want to be careful. Keep it away if you have one of those devices or another medical device that interacts with magnets. So just be mindful of that. This does have a big magnet in the back. Many of these devices have magnets anyway, but this is just a bigger magnet. So you want to be overly careful with it if you have one of those devices. Now, as far as the overall experience, so far it's actually been pretty good. There have been some issues too, but we'll talk about the overall stability of it first, and then talk about what I've found that's wrong and what you've found that's wrong based off the YouTube community poll. So far it's been a good experience. Scrolling is smooth. Most things are smooth. Overall, just use of it seems nice and fast. Opening the camera is like expected. Taking photos is nice and fast. Everything you're doing just seems to be responding like it should, like you would expect with an iPhone. Most people are saying the same thing, that the experience is nice and fast, even on a 6S Plus, for example, an iPhone 11. It doesn't really matter which phone. It seems to have similar experiences. You'll see how fast the camera opened there. I snapped a photo. It's just super fast in general, so that's a good sign. The betas were nice and fast, and this seems to be too. The keyboard lag is gone, which is really nice. So if I go into notes and then I type hello, you'll see that it's nice and responsive, and all of the suggestions are back. And that's something Apple mentioned that they fixed, but this has been a problem for a while. So I didn't type it right. This has been a problem for Awesome, but you get the idea. It's nice and fast. It's working well when you're in messages and everything else. So it seems to be fixed, at least for me, on the devices that I have, and many other people are saying the same thing. So overall, it's very solid. I've had no issues, and I'll talk about battery life in a little bit. But the day after I started using this, I noticed that lag return when you go home from an app. So maybe you're in music, swipe up, and then sometimes it will stutter. I don't know if I can get it to do it again, but it's pretty noticeable when it does it, and it happens on all devices. I've seen multiple mentions of this. It doesn't really matter what device you're in or what app you're in or what device you're on. It just seems to stutter when you go in and out of it sometimes. So it's really random, and it only happened after the first day of use. And like I said, it's intermittent. So right now, it doesn't seem to be happening. So it seems nice and smooth now. I haven't experienced that on my iPad, just the iPhone. That's the only issue I've had with the iPhone. So that's the only issue personally that I've experienced with it at all, is that slight lag. Now, most of you have said the same thing. You're seeing that same sort of lag when you're closing apps, but the majority of people say that performance overall has been great, whether that be playing a game, whether that be going into the camera, snapping a picture. There are a few instances where people had some interesting issues with maybe the camera just not showing up at all, but it seems to be few and far between, and those could be device issues, or they just need a fresh install. Sometimes that will cause a problem, and with earlier versions of iOS 14, when the battery was really bad, Apple suggested a fresh install. That fixed the problem. Also, the other good news is many people are saying notifications seem to be working properly again. So notifications seem to be like they should be. They're coming in. I've had no issues with Instagram notifications. Those seem to be popping in, and people are saying notifications that weren't coming in before are showing up again. The only other issue people have mentioned that I've seen is album art not loading when maybe you're listening to a song. So maybe you're listening to any one of these songs. When you're in the album art, it may not load. So sometimes that may not show up. And if it doesn't, well, that's obviously a problem, and we'll just have to report it in future versions. Now, the green tint issue is remaining on the iPhone 12 series phones. It's specific to those phones. Many people have been asking about it, but Apple acknowledged this in an internal memo, according to Mac Rumors, that it would be fixed with software. I know some people think it's hardware related, but last year, the iPhone 11 Pro Max and 11 Pro had the exact same problem, and Apple actually addressed it with a software update. I'm confident they can do it with the 12. And if they don't, they'll have to do some sort of recall, I suppose. But I've tested it on many iPhone 12s, and I was only able to see it sort of on one. So my 12 Pro Max, I can't replicate it even in lower darkness or anything like that. Sometimes you get some green edges on the outside if it's in a really dark room, but I can't replicate it at all. So it depends on the room you're in, I suppose, but right now I'm not able to see it. And then finally, the yellow tint issue. People keep asking, is Apple going to fix this? And I don't think they're going to fix it. I think it's just the display being more color accurate. If you've ever calibrated a display, it tends to be a little bit more yellow or warmer. And compared to my iPhone 11, it's going to have a little bit different look on it. So let me switch out of dark mode here. And you can see the whites. True Tone is turned off on both. They just look a little bit different. And that's why when you test the color accuracy of the iPhone 12 Pro Max, it tests so color accurate because it's calibrated to be accurate, not necessarily to be bright and super white. So it makes a difference, and I think that's why it's like that. They have not addressed this. So they could change that, but so far I don't think they're going to fix it. Now, as far as battery life, I wanted to talk about battery life on the iPhone first and then the iPad because they're a little bit different in their experience, at least for me in the past. So if we go to settings, let me turn dark mode back on, go into settings, go down to battery. My battery health is 100%. And I noticed in the comments more people saying, I don't like to do updates because they decrease my battery health. And that's actually not accurate. It's just rechecking the battery health. So it's checking the physical capability of the internal battery every time you update. So that's why it may go down more than it would just using it day to day. But if we go ahead and take a look at the last 10 days, here's today, and the phone was not plugged in. You'll see it says last charged to 91% 48 minutes ago. This was the time it took me to drive 2 miles with my phone in my car or so. So I drove with it a little bit and that was it. So I got 4 hours and 8 minutes of screen on time, 1 hour and 3 minutes of screen off time. I'm not even at 50% yet. So that would mean I'd get probably 8 to 9 hours of screen on time. For me, this is a big improvement over iOS 14.3 and early iOS 14.4 betas. Depending on the day, though, it varies greatly. You'll see yesterday I only got 2 hours and 3 minutes of screen on time, 5 hours and 3 minutes of screen off time, and used 50% of my battery. So it seems to vary a lot, but the one thing I noticed is I can easily get through the day and have 50% left. So my normal usage, that seems to be very consistent, and I'm pretty happy with the battery life in it. So I really think, I'm not so sure that this battery level is super accurate these days because I can easily get through a day with it. Now, as far as the iPad goes, the iPad seems to be a little bit better. Now, previously, the iPad seemed to be draining very quickly when it was on sort of standby. And that goes the same for the iPhone. Many people are saying that the iPhone's no longer draining on standby as much as it did. And so the iPad seems to be fixed when it comes to the standby drain. So if we go into battery here, you'll see I charged it today at 2:24 p.m., only up to 97%. I just wanted to use it, took it off the charger. And I had 2 hours of screen on time, 1 hour and 27 minutes of screen off time, and I'm at 80%. That's pretty good. If you use 20% of your battery and it's 2 hours, well, that will give you about 10 hours of battery life like you would expect with the iPad. If I leave this with the cover on it just closed overnight, I don't see any excessive drain like I would before. It was really bad before. It seems to be much better, and it looks like that drain is fixed. And that was a huge concern for me, and I know a lot of people were concerned with that on the iPhones as well. So that usage, when you're not using it, it's shut off, just sitting there, whether you charge overnight or not, or if you're not charging, people were seeing huge drain. If you're charging at night and maybe using it during the day and then put it aside, it shouldn't be draining like that anymore. So hopefully we see it fixed this time. It looks like it is, but it's not going to be the same for everyone. Now, as far as iOS 14.4 and when to expect its release, well, I would say as early as this coming week. Early in the week, I can't pick the day because Apple's been very random this time. But as far as the actual release to the public, I would expect it early in the week unless they find some major issues. Now, the issues I've mentioned don't seem big enough to me anyway for them to push it to maybe an RC2, but I could be wrong. Apple has actually done it a couple times in the past with an RC2 and a GM2 when they used to call it GM. So it's possible we could see that. But based on what they've been doing lately, it wouldn't surprise me if they'll go right to 14.4 and skip RC2. Now, I did think iOS 14.3.1 would be released to the public, but Apple decided to release 14.4 instead with only 2 betas and then a release candidate, which is really unlikely. And they did it last year. I was going based off that information, and apparently they decided not to do that. So unfortunately, we're not going to have a minor update. We'll have a larger update, but I don't know that this warrants a larger update with what's in it. But either way, that's what Apple decided to do. And last year, around this time, they started to do some strange things as well. So we had a 13.4.1 with iOS, then we had a 13.4.5 and a 13.5, and it was really confusing at that time when they were releasing things, what they were naming them. It was a little odd. If you go back and look, you'll see all of these different odd versions. So it's possible for them to do anything at this point, but I would expect a release this week for sure. Now, as far as the YouTube community poll, well, there were a ton of responses in just a short amount of time. So here are the statistics on the left of different things like battery life, people mentioning that, lag, freezing, heat, and crashing. So really, most people mentioned battery life, and the majority of people actually said it was the same or better. So that's a good sign. As far as devices people are using, here's all the different devices people are using. It still surprises me how many people are using an iPhone 11, so I think that's great. I still think it's a great phone, so it seems like a lot of people seem to agree with that. It's a very good, less expensive option for the iPhone, even though it's still fairly pricey. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the YouTube community poll. Now, at the time of recording this video, the poll has been live for about 11 hours, and I'm super grateful for how many people are actually voting on this. It's great amounts of information and data that we can gather to see what the update is actually like. And you can see there's 16,000 plus votes. So in 11 hours, that's amazing. So I'm super appreciative of that. And you'll see 16% said it's great, 3% said it's terrible, which is really low. So that's a great thing to see. And then 5% said okay, but some bugs. Now, 66% of you are using iOS 14.3 or older, and this is fairly typical depending on which version we're on. If it's a public version, usually that number is much lower for an older version, and then 10% are using Android. And so there's still a decent amount of people using Android, and so that's why I include this on that poll. There's not a whole lot of other things to add here, and I do cover Android updates as well. So you'll see here we have 221 comments, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of them. So we'll sort by newest first and take a look at them. Now, most people are commenting here too with iOS 14.3. So there's a lot of comments about both versions, but we'll take a look at some of these. So Stefan Fernando says, iOS 14.3 has been great for me, but there is a stutter when closing apps. Hope it's fixed in 14.4. And like I said, at least for me, it's very intermittent, but it does not seem to be fixed so far. The name's Gabe said, iPhone XS Max, I have one issue. The flash sometimes won't activate, even though it is on. It shows that it is off, and then I move the iPhone around and it fixes itself. Other than that, it's the best iOS 14 update so far. It is very stable. Now, SA685 says, I'm on iOS 14.4 RC. So far, so good, except for battery, which is a bit weird for me. When I played games like Call of Duty Mobile on Beta 2, the battery drains faster, of course. But in RC, it drains slightly faster. Standby time is also slightly worse, but it's been just a few days, so this is what I'm currently experiencing. No other issues I've come across on iPhone 10. Thomas Baker says, iPad Pro 12.9 2018 battery life not good, went from 100% to 55% in 5 hours, otherwise okay. And I actually left a comment here saying if it went to 5 or 55% in 5 hours, that's actually great battery life. You should be getting 10 hours of battery life screen on time with that device, so that's actually pretty good. My iPhone 11 Pro Max battery drains from 100 to 50 without touching the phone in 4 hours. And I would say, Mr. Bew, I would say that if you're having that issue, I would definitely check for apps running, because if you're not doing anything and it's draining that fast, there's something using power in the background, whether that be an app, whether that be exposure notifications tracking the phone. Even though that's Bluetooth, it has been causing some battery drain for some. And so it seems like there's definitely something using your battery. I would look into that. HaleWG51 says, running iPadOS 14.4 RC, I have noticed the battery life is better than it has been recently. Daniel Adresso says, iOS 14.4 RC update is doing good on iPhone 11. Yuri Chandler says, great on my 11 Pro. The only thing I notice is that the weather widget likes to disappear. iTech Everything says, way better as compared to 14.3. 14.3 was trash. iOS 14.4 is the best so far. iPhone XR. Shardul Bandu says, running it on my iPhone 12, flawless, smooth, but not so battery friendly. All issues are resolved, now specifically with the keyboard lag. Nick V says, great videos, Aaron. Thank you. I decided to bite the bullet and install it after ignoring the betas. So far, no obvious problems. The only odd thing is that both my iPhone 7 Plus and my iPad Pro 10.5 were updated from iOS 14.3, and the iPad has the feedback icon, but the iPhone doesn't. I still have the profile on both devices. Any thoughts? Apple did remove the feedback app from the device with this on here. Usually you have to remove the profile to do that. So maybe there's just a slight change in the software. If you remove the profile from the iPad, it may just disappear. It could just be a small fluke. It's pretty good. Seems better than iOS 14.3 for me on my iPhone 12 Pro Max. Battery improved. Also, sometimes I get the lag when going from an app swiping home, but other than that, it's been good. Maybe RC2 will fix the lag. Also love your videos. Thank you. Vasile says, as I voted, it's great, but that stutter is still among us. On my iPhone 12 Pro Max, 14.4 RC, it's good. Battery life is better. Battery on standby is very good. I hope to see the green tint issue resolved. And finally, Braden says, I've had a great experience with the RC on my iPhone 12. Stutter is gone from beta 2 and battery seems to be good again. And then also someone saying not getting the update. And like I mentioned before, this is actually out to developers and public beta testers. Expect the public release this coming week. Now, should you install iOS 14.4 RC? Well, if you're a beta tester or a developer and you haven't installed it already, I would highly recommend it. It will bring all of the bug fixes. You'll have the latest version. And of course, you can report feedback in future versions if you want to continue beta testing and just sort of keeping track of what's going on. Now, if you're on the public version of iOS 14.3 and you wanted to try a beta, well, this would be the time to actually try it, as this will be the most stable. However, I would caution you that if you're going to beta test, make sure you have a computer or some way to roll back if you have problems, and make sure you have backups. I never recommend going to a beta if you don't have some way of going back, just to be careful with that. But this probably will be the version that's released to the public this coming week with iOS 14.4. Now, Apple did push out a ton of RC updates as well, including iPadOS 14.4 RC, watchOS 7.3 RC, macOS 11.2 Big Sur RC, as well as tvOS 14.4 RC and HomePodOS 14.4 RC. So with all of those updates coming out, I would be surprised if they push out an RC2, but it's still very possible. So either way, if you want to try iOS 14.4, you could definitely do that, but you could just wait a few days as well. Also, the next beta I would expect soon after that. Apple typically releases a beta either on the same day or the following day, so we could see either iOS 14.5 or some variant of 14.4.1, something like that. Right now, this time of year, Apple is a little bit more unpredictable than previously, so that's what I'd look for. There could be various versions. It's hard to say, and we'll have to wait and see. So they're being a little bit random like they were last year this time. But let me know if you've found anything else in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already, though, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.